All right, so we're going to take a look at section 2.3. This is order of operations for Math 9, and you should have the notes in front of you. Remember, if you lose a copy of your notes, you can go to the website and download the copy of the notes here, mrmathwell.com. Go to your math courses, Math 9, and it should be Chapter 2 notes right here, student. Okay, so if you need to reprint them for whatever reason, if you lost them, you can print them right from the website. All right, so let's fill in some of these together. Order of operations. We've talked about order of operations before. When you have a string of mathematical operations to do in a question, there is a certain order that we need to do them in. And you guys remember we talked about bed mass in a previous lesson. So really quickly, let's just go over some basics, some review of basics. We're going to review lots of stuff here. So let's just do a couple examples here of some basic stuff. So if we do 5 plus 2, okay, adding integers. If you have two positives that you add, this is just like counting fingers, right? So this is 7. You have two positive numbers and you add them together, you get the positive number. When you add, okay, a negative number. So here's another example, okay? 5 plus negative 2. Well, that's actually the same as 5 minus 2, okay? When you're adding a negative, think about it this way. If you're going in the right direction, you're adding something, okay, one, another. If you add a negative, it's actually a number that points the opposite way. So you have a positive number that points this way, let's say, and then you have a negative number that points the other way, because the negative is opposite of it. So if you're going to put those two together, if you're going to sandwich them together, you have a certain number that goes one way. In this case, we have 5 that point this way, and then we have 2 that point the other way. So when you sandwich those together, you got to go 5, and then you got to go back 2. So adding a negative is just like subtracting, and that's going to be 3. Okay, it's going to be positive 3. It's not the same as multiplying. We'll get into that. Okay, so there's two examples right here. 1, 2. Let's do some subtracting now. I'll do that in blue. So let's say we had 3 minus 5. Okay. And the other way you could think about these things is on a number line, right? I said one way you could look at it is numbers pointing a certain way, but if we have 1, 2, 3, if we start with 3 over here, you could think about an object or something that starts on a number line at the number 3. And then from there, when we add, we usually go this way to add and this way to subtract, right? So if we are subtracting 5, that means we have to take away 5, okay? If you have $3 and you owe your friend $5, okay, that means that you actually owe them more than you have, and so you would go into the negative territory, right? So now you have $3, but you got to give 5 to your friend. Well, now you're 2 in the hole, or you're at minus 2. Okay, you see that? You count 5, and that's where you would now land. So now you're in the hole there. You're in the negative category. Okay. Here's another big one though. If we have 9, let's say minus a negative. 9 minus a negative 1. Okay. This is where it gets a little tricky because it's a little harder to visualize this, but let's say we had 9, we start up 9 here, okay, and then we're subtracting, so we have to go this way, but we're subtracting a negative. So when we subtract a negative, we are sort of doing the opposite of what this is, right? Subtracting a positive, we go left instead of right. So when we subtract a number, it's kind of like we move the opposite way that we think we should. So this is just one way I'm trying to explain it to you. So when we subtract a negative number, we want to go this way, but it's a negative number. So already it's going this way. So we have to kind of go the opposite way. So instead of going back, we go forward with this number. And subtracting a negative actually is the same as adding. Okay? So we actually go this direction. Okay? It's really tough to draw pictorially this to tell you the truth. But if you think about subtracting is sort of the opposite of what this sign is, then subtracting, the opposite of the negative, is actually adding. So when you have two negatives like this, subtract negative, it's the same as adding, so that's actually 10. Okay? What about if we have a negative number first? Negative 5 minus a negative 2. Okay, this is where it gets really tricky. All the negatives really throw students off, okay? So what you have to think about, or one thing you can think about, is where do you start with this? And you start at negative 5, okay, on your number line. So let's say this is negative 5. And what we learned before is that when you subtract a negative, that's the same as adding this number. Okay, so you're doing the opposite of what negative is, which is adding. So that's like negative 5 plus 2. So really important, these two kind of come together to make a plus, but you don't do anything with this one because it's got no partner here to do anything with, so that one stays a negative. And again, this is where it gets tricky. The rules seem a little bit different. They seem a little bit different, but when you have two negatives, one right after the other, a minus and a negative, then it's going to turn into a positive. Okay, yeah, question?
Actually, just something I want to say. At my old school, my math teacher always explained it as temperature. Because if you have like negatives and cold.
Okay, so another example. Thank you for that example. If you think about it as temperature, if you have something that's hot, like this one, 9 is hot, and you take away a cold temperature, if you're taking away cold, it's like you're adding heat. So 9 taking away something that's cold is like 9 adding something. That's a great example too. I like it. Any other comments or questions on that? Girls have any questions? No? Okay. All right, multiplying integers. We went over this. This is going to be quick. We did a whole lesson on this one. So when you have a negative times a negative, what's the answer going to be? Is it going to be positive or negative, the answer? Same sign, positive, and then you simply multiply the numbers. Okay? When you have opposite signs, 3 times negative 9, that's going to be a negative answer, and that's going to be 3 times 9 is 27. Okay, and dividing is very similar to multiplying. We know this. If you have, well, let's say negative 9 divided by negative 3 this time. So a negative divided by a negative is going to give you a what? It's going to be positive, and then 9 divided by 3 is 3. Yeah. Okay? And then opposite signs will be negative, such as 10 divided by negative 5. That's another example there. That's going to be a negative answer, and 10 divided by 5 is 2. Negative 2. Good. All right, if you need more practice, I would suggest you can look online for making your own practice sheets if you want. Mathaids.com is one that is where you can go and get yourself some help if you would like to. All right, let's talk about order of operations. So if we have, back to the main part of this lesson, if we have a string of operations to do, then we have to choose which ones we actually do first. We can't always just go from left to right. So bed mass is the indication of how we move through this string of operations. All right, so bed mass is a good way to remember this. B is brackets, okay? So anything inside brackets, you would do those first. E, exponents. If you have anything to the power of something, you do that exponent then next. D and M is multiply or divide in order from left to right, whichever comes first. Then addition and subtraction is always last. Whichever comes first, add or subtract left to right. Okay, so let's do an example here. Okay, let's do 1 plus 2 to the power of 3. So here, whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. Okay, so here's our first example, 1 plus 2 to the power of 3. There's two operations that I see here. One is addition, and one is to the power of. Okay, so which one do I do first according to bed mass? Yeah, exponents first. Very good. So I'm going to evaluate this part first. And can I just say, in grade 9, oftentimes I kind of got to train you guys on how to show your work and how to do things. So when you show your work, remember, try and do one part of the question at a time and rewrite all the rest of the questions so that you don't miss anything and you know exactly what you've done and what you haven't done. Also, very important, okay, very important, please do not show each step of your work left to right like you're writing a novel. This is not English. We're not writing a math novel here. Don't go left to right. So I see this all the time, okay? Don't do this. Don't write this down. Don't do this, okay? Don't go left to right. Now, does that make it wrong? It doesn't necessarily make it wrong, but trust me when I say that when you get very complicated questions where there's lots of lines of work, you are not going to want to go all the way left, and then it's going to be a mess, and you're going to make mistakes. Promise. So please begin to work down, okay? Work down, and keep things in their columns if you can. So what I mean is this: rewrite the 1 because I'm not dealing with that yet. Then rewrite the 2 cubed as 8. So that's kind of in order in your vertical columns, okay? And again, you just have to trust me, because in grade 10 and grade 11 and grade 12 and in university or however far you go in math, you're not going to be able to do anything left to right like a novel, okay? It's just going to get too messy. You're going to make too many mistakes. So go down. Now, at this point, you're just going to write your answer, because that's the end of it, and then I want you to circle your answer at the end. Show me what your answer is. Always circle your answers as well, okay? Now, equal signs, you might ask about equal sign. Do you need an equal sign? Not really. If you want to put equal signs in there, though, that's totally great as well. So this expression equals this, work down. Equal signs are optional, okay? Yeah, question?
For that showing work, do we
Yep.
have to put like a circle
Do you have to what? Sorry, speak a little louder.
like showing our work?
Yeah.
Are we only allowed to put a circle, or put like anything else at a time?
Are you only allowed to put Oh, yeah. Just circle one circle around the answer, please. Yeah. No, this doesn't help me. That doesn't help me at all. I need to know where you stop, where your answer is. So, if you want to use a square or something, or something like that, just clearly identify your answer, okay? Circles usually are the easiest, but I see some students do like this or whatever. I'm totally fine with that. If you like squares better, that's great, or rectangles, whatever. Okay, let's do another one. This one. Let's do 3 minus 1 all cubed. Okay. Now, I kind of give you a hint of what we need to do first. I said 3 minus 1 all cubed. You see that? That was my little hint. But order of operations would say I start at B. Do I have any operations inside brackets? I sure do right here. Even though subtraction would come way after exponents, because this is in the brackets, I have to do that first. All right. So that's what makes this a bit different. Okay, so 3 minus 1 is 2. And I'm going to make sure I cube that. Okay? And 2 cubed is 8. I'm done. That's my answer. Are you guys okay with that? Okay. Very good. All right. I feel like we should get a little bit trickier, though. I've just been too easy on you, so let's do something that's a little bit trickier. Okay. Square bracket there. 2 times -2 cubed squared. So here we have 3 operations that I see. I see multiplication, I see exponents. Well, inside the brackets, technically not, but exponent here. And then I have another exponent. So there's 3 different things we got to consider. So which one should we try to do first?
The exponent.
Yeah, the first couple here, brackets, exponents. Okay, let's look at the brackets. We do have brackets. We have 2 sets of brackets. If you have 2 sets of brackets, go inside to the innermost bracket first and examine that. In this case, we don't have any operations to do, okay? But the reality is that we do have to do what's inside the brackets. We have to do this first before we do that squared part. All right? So this one, nothing to do there. That's taken care of. So should I do the multiplication next, or should I do the exponents next? Yeah, exponents. You guys are on it. So I don't do this first. I don't multiply this first. I instead have to do this. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite the square brackets. I'm not doing anything with this 2 times yet, but I'm going to rewrite this as, now be careful, the negative 2 is the base. So it's negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. We have 3 negatives. What's my answer going to be? Negative. And 2 cubed is? 8. Great. 8, great. Okay. Now, if you have 2 operations beside each other like this, that's a good time to use the brackets, so I would keep the brackets there. But we have no more cubed now. I'll rewrite everything else. Okay? Now, I don't know what you think about this. Some of you, I know for a fact, I've seen your work already, that some of you don't show a lot of work, okay? Because in elementary school, you know, adding integers, multiplying stuff, you do that in your head, whatever, it's all good. You need to get into the habit of showing your work. So stuff like this is really important. If you get into the habit of doing this, you'll get fairly quick at it, and you'll make fewer mistakes. So that's my goal, okay? That you make fewer mistakes. So this is important. All right, what's next? What's next is, do I do the exponents or the multiplication? Ooh, that's a tricky one because we still have these brackets. Very good. So I do have to do this multiplication next because that's still inside the brackets. So what's 2 times negative 8? It is negative 16. Okay, numbers are getting big. If you want to change those square brackets to round brackets now because they're the only ones you have, that's totally fine. That's totally fine. Okay, so we're trying not to use our calculators at all this chapter. This is a pretty big one though. Has anyone written down or memorized any of those square numbers that I suggested near the beginning? We should be memorizing some of those squares, like 2 squared is 4, 3 squared is 9, 4 squared is 16. You should have a list of those somewhere. You should try and memorize those up to 20. So I don't know if I actually asked you guys to do that or if that was another class, to be honest with you. But some of these square numbers, anytime now, a good idea to start memorizing the square numbers. Okay, all the way up to 20 if you can. And sometimes I have to think about it too. So I do know them, but sometimes it's like I have to think about it as well. So it's not something you use every day, but does anyone know what 16 squared is?
256.
Oh, 256. Okay, did you have that written down somewhere? No? Okay, all right. Well, good. If you memorize that, great. My second question, that is correct. My second question would be, is the answer positive or negative? Okay, many of you are saying positive. We all in agreement with that? Because this is really a negative 16. This is what this is. You don't have to write this down, but it's negative 16 times negative 16, right? That's what this means. So yeah, it's going to be a positive answer and positive 256. Very good. Now, if you had to use your calculator for that, that's no problem. Some of the numbers get bigger. I don't mind. But what I'm saying is that you should try not to use your calculator whenever possible here, because a lot of little things that would be very good to solidify before we move on. Okay, I do have other examples, but we spent a little bit of time on that. Those are good examples for now. So let's go down to this one. And this question here in your notes. Okay, so here's a bit of a complicated one. The example says the student got the correct answer but didn't earn full marks. So there's something wrong inside this, the work here. There's something that the student didn't quite do quite right, but coincidentally did get the correct answer. So take a moment to look at that and let me know if you see anything that is incorrect. I see one thing here, so yeah, I think there's just maybe one thing. Okay, put up your hand. Yeah, just put up your hand if you see it. I see hands kind of starting to go up. Okay, so there's something here that wasn't done quite right, but coincidentally was the correct answer. Okay, yeah, who wants to tell us? Do you want to tell us?
Leading for the second row,
Yeah.
it was the 12 2, like 12 to
Okay, the second row, something around here is an issue. Hey, so what's wrong with this?
They didn't show their work for the multiplication and
Okay.
the exponents first.
Okay, so the multiplication and the exponent thing was an issue, right? So they should have done what? I think you said it. Exponent first before the multiplication. That's perfect. Thank you so much. Yes. So what they did was they did the multiplication here to get 3 times 4 is 12, and then they did the exponents afterwards. So what should have happened here was it should have been looking something like this. The second row should have looked like this. 24, and then we should have done this first. So it should have been 24 minus 3 times 16. Okay, so that should have been this part here. And that would have been 24 minus 48 minus 48. Right? So to the power of 0. Yeah, so that would have been, yeah. So 24 minus 48, so that would have been, here, this is the way it should have been. 24 minus 48 is negative 24. That would be to the power of 0. That would have been negative 1. So same answer because of the power of 0, but this number was not quite right. That should have been a negative 24. All right. How you guys doing with that? Looking good? Question? All right. Okay, so here's your assignment, and I'll do a couple questions here with you to get you going.
What page is it?
It's 2.3, page 66.